after what was a completely ugly, horrible, terrible, use whatever objective you wanted to say about that game. The Steelers tied the Lions, and there's a lot to talk about as far as cleaning up the direction of the team, who they can count on, and what should this team even look like moving forward. Lots of questionable decisions on what to go for, the offense, the defense's struggles to stop the run, and a lot of questions as far as can this team finish out their stretch. I'm Chris Carter of the Locked On Steelers podcast. We're going to dive into several of those big questions that I'm sure the fans have about the game. We thank you for making the Locked On Steelers podcast your first listen every day, as we are free and available on all podcasting platforms. I'm Chris Carter of the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find this podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and of course, YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like this video if you're enjoying it. I understand it's tough to enjoy things after tying the winless Detroit Lions Steelers fans, but hey, help me out anyways. You'll also, if you give us 5 stars ratings with a positive comment on Apple Podcasts, you get a shout out at the end of the show. So, yeah, as I said in my brief Locked On Now update that I gave also on YouTube, this was ugly. This was almost as bad as it gets. Losing, I guess, would be as bad as it gets, as I started to think about, like, what could have been worse. But as far as playing and as far as trying to establish an identity for who you are moving forward, man, the Steelers are in a complete heap of a mess. Now, granted, there were a lot of things that went into this game and made it weirder than it would have been probably if other things. Ben Roethlisberger being announced, he tested positive for COVID-19. We hope that he feels better and that he's able to recover from that. But I mean, you see, the night before that gets announced, Mason Rudolph time, he goes in. Very curious how after the game, everyone acknowledged, from Tomlin to Rudolph to Najee Harris, the game plan did not change with Mason Rudolph in. Now, I have 2 sides to this because it's very fair to look at. I always try to look at the different sides and to see, what all adds up here. But then I look at this and I say, was that really that bad of a strategy? Because on one side, yes, it is, because he's not the same kind of quarterback that Ben Roethlisberger is. Ben Roethlisberger is in tune with this offense. He knows when and where the ball's supposed to go most of the time. Sometimes he doesn't. He misses open opportunities. But Mason Rudolph not as into the rhythm of the offense as Ben is, considering this has been Ben's offense for 16 years. But with Mason Rudolph, you have to think, maybe do the Steelers run the ball more? Now, to be fair, they ran the ball with Najee Harris 26 times for 105 yards. He was a solid contributor on the day, had a touchdown wiped off the board. They overall ran for over 100 and over 140. Well, they ran for 145 yards total on the day, so they did run the ball. But you look at this game and you see, man, Mason Rudolph attempted 50 passes in this game. Not exactly the number that you want from a backup quarterback doing that, but you also have to remember circumstances, because a lot of times the Lions were loading the box, and you're like, hey, you know what? You can't just run at them. If they're giving you one-on-one, you got to be able to win some one-on-ones, and that's why you need a viable backup. I'll get to Mason Rudolph in a bit, but to me, the biggest mess is that Matt Canada doesn't have a direction for this offense. He wants to do quick passing, but he also wants to do power run, but he also wants to do that. He's got to pick a lane. This offense is not good enough yet to try and kill you with several different things, if you know what I mean. When an offense is finding its identity, it needs to be really good at one thing. And there's no one thing you could point to and say, man, this offense is good at that. There's players you could point to, Pat Freiermuth, Najee Harris. They're very good. I think when Deontay Johnson isn't fumbling away the ball in overtime, he's very good. Same thing for Pat Freiermuth, because he also fumbled in overtime. But they haven't developed any rhythm to say, hey, this is the one thing. If we call these plays, we know we're going to get 6, 7, 8 yards off of this on a big play. There's still constant throwing short of the marker on third downs. Just not the kind of offense that you want to run. Also, just bizarre game planning or, leading to who's open. In this game, Deontay Johnson did lead the team with 13 targets and 7 catches for 83 yards, but Ray McCloud had 12 targets and caught the ball 9 times. I actually thought Ray McCloud did his job in this game. You're talking about the fifth receiver that, on this roster coming into the season, and he caught 9 of 12 passes for 63 yards. Also did a good job returning. Though his returning numbers aren't like elite or anything like that in this game. He had a one where it was a bounce at midfield that he caught, and he stopped it from going further back. It gave the Steelers really good field position. He had another where the Lions were about to pin it at the 1, and they tipped it back into play. But McCloud went after the football and was able to, and because he hit it, it went into the end zone. And people thought, oh, that would have been that was a fumble. What was he thinking? Is actually he knows the rules, because once the punt team has touched the ball, the return team can do whatever they want. They can pick it up, return it, fumble it 20 times. It doesn't matter. It stays with the return team. That's just the rule, how the rule has always been, to prevent the punt team from knocking the ball into the returner. So Raymond McCloud, I actually thought did a decent job. But still, why are you highlighting him in this offense? Pat Freiermuth, 5 catches, 31 yards, 9 targets. I mean, yeah, sure, 9 targets, but a lot of those came really late in the game. It seemed like this game should have been a lot of load up, power these guys over. They had the 29th ranked rushing defense coming into this game. Let Najee Harris eat, and then play action. Go to old school football. This was not a team that was going to come at you with exotic blitzes, with crazy defenders all over the place. You should have been loading up the box. I should have seen some Zach Banner on the field, whether as a starting offensive tackle or the sixth offensive tackle or the sixth offensive lineman, coming out there and then just bulldozing people and then playing off of that bulldozing to give Mason Rudolph easier, simpler, big, heavier package tosses to get yards over the middle. But that's not what happened here. I think Matt Canada is still trying to play the idea that, they can dink and dunk the short passing offense game. And you know what? Maybe with Ben Roethlisberger, eventually that'll work, but you have to be able to hit the ball middle down the field. You have to be able to stretch the field a little bit. And in this game, I still didn't see enough of that. And, before it was like, maybe this is Ben Roethlisberger. Maybe this is Ben Roethlisberger doing this or Ben Roethlisberger doing that. But Mason Rudolph also had similar problems here. And now you have to ask yourself, is there even a direction for this Steelers offense? It seems like there's a lot of cool ideas here and there. The jet sweeps can work on occasion. There's a couple of times you catch guys off guard. But at the same time, you're looking at an offense. Again, you knew that this would be a long season for these guys developing together. You were excited for Najee Harris and Pat Freiermuth, but you knew that offensive line was going to take time. You knew that it was going to, be a question about what the passing offense could do. And then, of course, Mason Rudolph being in, especially for this game, you knew that was probably going to be a struggle. I know some people before the game said, oh, this is his chance to prove that he's Ben's successor. And I was like, he did not do that. The game wasn't all on him. I will not say that at all, but he did not do it. But the bottom line here is that, I continue to look around. I look for, play schemes, power runs, that. There's nothing that you can pin on this offense and say, this is their thing. And it should be running the ball. It really should be, loading up, overpowering people. And again, I get it. The offensive line isn't as good as it has been in the past and as good as other teams. So that's a big part of this. But for me, when I look at this, at the Steelers offense, if you're building around Najee Harris and Pat Freiermuth, you need to have heavier formations, more opportunities to feed them the ball and for big chances. And they just haven't done that. So that much is on Matt Canada and Mike Tomlin for not doing that. Mike Tomlin doesn't call the in-game plays. He's not the guy that does that. He says what he wants if they want to go for on 4th down, 3rd down, whatever. But Mike Tomlin's never been a guy that's going to be a micromanager that steps in and says, I'm taking over the offensive play calling duties. That's just not how he works. And it's a smart way to do, because when you start micromanaging, that's when stuff gets a little bit crazier. It helps keep that organizational integrity that's been important to the Steelers. We got more to break down here on this offense. We'll get to the defense in the 3rd segment, but I want to talk more about Mason Rudolph in this game because there were some interesting things that we saw from him all throughout the night. But first, I got to tell you guys about DirecTV Stream. Does this sound familiar? You've got one device that lets you catch the game live, another to let you stream your favorite shows, and then you're watching your sports highlights on your phone, and you've got your neighbor's best friends log in for the good stuff. Well, I want to tell you about a simple way to get all that entertainment you love without the hassle, and a great way to finally get your TV together. It's called DirecTV Stream, and it brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes and no need to buy another device ever again. And the best part, there's no annual contract. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at directtv.com. That's directtv.com. Compatible device required. Content may vary. And back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm Chris Carter, continuing our post-game thoughts here on this Lions game. Again, the offense a complete mess. The defense not safe from criticism either. But again, I'm going to them in the third segment because I get different thoughts on them. But the offense, I want to look at Mason Rudolph. And acknowledge some things here because I saw, as usual, when the game doesn't go the Steelers' way, and heck, even when it does go the Steelers' way. You see people fighting on Twitter and all these arguments going in different directions. So I usually try to at least make note because I do like to get the feel of what Steelers fans are thinking at times. Sane Steelers fans, crazy Steelers fans can go somewhere else. I don't got time for that. But one of the thoughts that one of the battle of thoughts that I saw out there was oh, this game was on Mason Rudolph, and oh, this game shouldn't be on Mason Rudolph because he's a backup quarterback and he did enough to win this game. And I will say this game isn't all on Mason Rudolph at all. Again, he threw his deep ball to Deontay Johnson, a very good deep ball that Johnson caught, broke open to the middle field, and then fumbled away. And again, it's not like Deontay Johnson stinks, but that's a play where he was trying to do a little bit extra, fumbled the opportunity to win the game. That was that was a very tough moment for him. Same thing, Pat Freiermuth, been a heck of a playmaker. We've talked about how he's been on fire for the Steelers. Fumbles away a big opportunity in overtime. 2 overtime fumbles. Those are not on Mason Rudolph. But what is on Mason Rudolph? Missing all the opportunities throughout the earlier parts of the game. There was a play. I'll go back to this, and then this is a mix of both Matt Canada and Mason Rudolph because I didn't talk about this enough in the first segment. But that red zone possession where they threw 3 straight times, that's where I was like, I don't know what's going on here. I don't know what the plan is. Now, Mike Tomlin talked about that being an RPO situation on first down where it was, to me, it should have been an R. Just that there's no pass option. And that would have been the time. Bring out Zach Banner. Put 6 offensive linemen on the field, double tight ends, triple tight ends even, and put Najee Harris out there and let them go to work. And that would have been, and you know what? We're coming out, we're bullying you. And if we're not bullying you, we're going to catch you off guard because you're going to play against the run so hard to stop Najee Harris. And then we'll find Pat Freiermuth or Zach Gentry or Eric Ebron in the end zone, whatever, something along those lines. But that wasn't in the cards. But I will say this, on third down, Matt Canada did draw up the right play to get him open. He called Pat Freiermuth going over the middle. The Lions jumped all over him. They said, we're not letting him get in the red zone. And he left Ray McLeod wide open, and Mason Rudolph just skips the ball to him. It's a simple 5-yard pass. It's one that every quarterback should be able to make in the NFL, and he just skips it to him. If he throws that touchdown, they probably win the game. Later in the game, I want to say it was third or fourth quarter, there was a third down where Mason Rudolph throws into traffic over the middle to try to hit James Washington. The ball's batted around. I thought, it might have been it almost got intercepted or something like that. I looked over to the sideline, and you just see Pat Freiermuth just walking all by himself, putting his hand up, and he's like, what are we doing here? Those are the things that if you're Mason Rudolph, you got to be able to do. You don't have to be super elite. And in fact, and this is why I wasn't too mad at the comments that, hey, they weren't going to change up too much of the scheme to, from Ben Roethlisberger to Mason Rudolph. And here's why. Because Mason is tasked with very similar things as Ben Roethlisberger in this situation. Don't lose the game on throwing interceptions. Don't throw the crazy pass here. Don't try to be Superman and fit it into this tight, cover 2 seam, right where the safety will have a shot, and you're trying to beat the safety with how hard and accurate you could throw the ball. That's not what you're asked to do. You're asked to take what is there. When they present something to you, you take it. And here's another thing to look at here too. Just like the Bears game, first possession, come out, walk down the field, touchdown, no problem. Everything looks smooth. This game, same thing. Come out, walk down the field, touchdown, everything's smooth. And he found the open man on that one. James Washington wide open, he took advantage of it. He really didn't do that for the rest of the game. And sometimes it makes me think maybe they're scripting plays, to start the game. That'll be a question that I'll have for Mike Tomlin on his Tuesday press conference, because I think that was something they definitely used to do with the Todd Haley days. I forget how many plays they said they scripted to start a game. I think it was 25 or something like that. But there was a script that they had that they stuck to in those days. And I have to wonder, with the success that they're starting to have in these earlier parts of the games, like Chicago, like the Lions. That makes me wonder: is this a situation where they where they're doing something a little extra here? They're planning this specifically, and that's what's leading to it. And then in game, when it's time to call whatever you want, that's when the problems come up. Maybe, possibly, that could be something. But again, we don't know for sure. We'll ask Mike Tomlin that after the fact. I had to go back. I have to admit, I normally come out a lot faster with my reactions, but I had to go back and just look at certain things on tape just to kind of see, okay, was this what I saw live? Because I wasn't so sure about this and I wasn't so sure about that. And the offense, it just continues to look to me when I'm looking at, like, nope, this is just, they don't, they know they're not good enough. At this part of the run game, they know they're not good at this part of the pass game. They're taking some shot plays here. There's no rhythm of consistency, and when that happens, you start to question things. And again, backup quarterback, you're not asking for an elite offense in this game, but you're asking for an identity, and the identity should have been power run, bully these guys, play off of it for play action, and hit a couple plays. I will give Mason Rudolph this: he was tough out there. He did not back down. He had I think a 26-yard run where he ran the other side of the field. Place went nuts. And then the run where he took on a big shot and the other guy came up with a hurt shoulder or a concussion, I believe. I mean, he gets points for that. He was tough. But the thing about Mason Rudolph that was coming into this game, I saw people talking about it, writing about it, saying, all these different things about, oh, this is his chance to show everyone that they're wrong about him and that he can be the future. He's not that. He's just not the future franchise quarterback. If he's a bridge quarterback between Ben and the next guy, it ain't going to be a good year. They would need to have a super elite defense. Now, the one thing I'll say is that, and we'll talk, I'm sure we will talk a million times about this going into the next season, so I won't spend too long on this, but one thing I will say is that I think if the Steelers took time next year to pay a quarterback cheap, whether that's a rookie contract because they draft a guy and they want to make him a starter early, or they get a veteran out of the NFL that they don't pay a whole lot of money, or if they go with Mason Rudolph, it would open the opportunity to reinvest in both the offensive line and the parts of the defense that they've kind of let get a little old and long in the tooth. So maybe they get another big name at cornerback if they don't like if they don't want to pay Joe Hayden next year. Maybe they get some help for Cam Hayward and Stephon Tuitt. Hopefully he's back next year, and you add some guys there. Maybe you go and get some help on the offensive line and say, you know what, we're going to get these guys because they're going to be able to just jump in and give you a jump start on offense. And you do that to say, all right, now we still have a game manager type quarterback, but now you have a better roster around that person and you can win more games that way. But again, long way down the road. We'll revisit that later in the season or after the season or whatever. The point is, Mason Rudolph did have opportunities in this game to show, hey, I can be the future here. Didn't show up in those moments. Did show up in some, but not enough. And that's the bottom line there. But again, the bigger problem with the offense, because Mason Rudolph's not going to be back, for the rest of the season. Now, Jay Glazer did say that he had heard it. He does not expect Ben Roethlisberger to be back in time for the Chargers game next week. There's been conflicting reports with that. I think he has to have two negative tests and be asymptomatic before he can be back with the Steelers. We'll see. This all happened right before the game, on Saturday, and then he tested positive again on Sunday. So we will see if, how this plays out. It just depends on how Ben recovers. Aaron Rodgers was tested positive before his game, last week, and then played again this week. So, and he didn't even have the vaccine. Ben Roethlisberger does have the vaccine, so he has different rules. So, maybe Ben's back or maybe Ben's not, but there has to be some identity on offense. And I truly believe, at this point, Ben Roethlisberger is not out here to be an elite quarterback. He's here to be a solid game managing quarterback that takes what's there and occasionally gives you the tough, gritty plays Ben can give you. Mason Rudolph, same sort of thing. Now, he doesn't have the same kind of grit as Ben, as far as I don't think he'd come up as big in some big moments, but he does give you opportunities out there, and that's what you want out of your quarterback. The problem is they don't have the offensive line to work with a quarterback that is that I think is of his caliber. They don't have the defense right now with all the injuries that they have, and we'll get to all those injuries because there are many in this game. But I don't think this team has an elite enough of a defense to say, hey, Mason Rudolph, go out there and you can play like you did in 2019 when they were beating teams like the Colts and the Rams with them out there because their defense was so deep, was so tough, and because they were able to manage everything else. So all that being said, there's a lot of things that this offense has to do to clean up moving forward, and it starts with better execution. It continues with better play calling, and it finishes with them finding an identity, finding a thing that they can cling on to and say on tape, boom, we are good at this thing right here. And if they can do that, I think it would go a long way, because then teams can say, okay, we have to focus on this part of the Steelers to shut down, or they'll crush us, and then you can play off of that and force them into guessing games. Unfortunately for the Steelers, that hasn't been happening. But like I said, lots of injuries in this game. The defense, lots of questions too. We're going to get to those injuries, talk about what's going on there, and I'm going to give you my thoughts on the defense, because it was not a happy day for them either. But first, I got to tell you guys about Built Bar. Built Bar is the best tasting protein bar ever. If you haven't tried a Built Bar by now, you're missing out. They say it's a protein bar, but it does not taste like one. If you have to try one of these amazing bars yourself to believe it. Most protein bars are chalky or waxy or just plain hard to choke down. The Built Bar is soft, covered in 100% real chocolate, and when you bite into it, you know you're eating something different. It's more of an experience, more than experience, one that you enjoy. In fact, you'll swear you're eating a candy bar. Built Bars are low in carbs, low calorie, low fat, low sugar, high in protein, all the healthy benefits on top of just being purely delicious. And they have so many flavors. Another great thing about Built Bar, there are so many mouth-watering flavors, including coconut, raspberry, mint brownie, coconut almond, salted caramel, double chocolate, and cherry barcia. This month, Built is coming out with new limited-time flavors every 3 to 4 days. So check out their website often. You don't want to miss out. Go to Built.com to use promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your next order. Again, that's LOCKED15, LOCKED 15, all capital letters, all one word, to get 15% off your next order. Again, this promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. We're also brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline's back and better than ever with a new web interface to start the basketball season. More props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline remains to be your number one spot for basketball and football action every season. Head to your new updated desktop or mobile website that they have to sign up today, and you'll get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use promo code Locked On, LOCKEDON, Locked On, to receive your bonus. From basketball to football to baseball postseason, which is now over. Congratulations to the Atlanta Braves. You also have NHL, boxing, and UFC. Write down your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all of the amazing offers available for the 2021 season at BetOnline, with the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports, and BetOnline, where the game starts. Now, as you know, when we do back-to-back ad reads, we like to keep it rolling here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. And Chris Carter, host here. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. Man, this was also a rough game for injuries. Joe Hayden has a mid-foot sprain. We don't know what that means. You got to question. He's up there in his 30s. Sometimes those kind of injuries, you don't know how long of an impact it is. Cam Hayward had an injury on Monday. He was back and playing this week, and playing great, by the way. We'll get to him in just a minute. But of course, the big story is T.J. Watt has a quote unquote hip and knee injuries. And I'm telling you, when he grabbed for his knee on the one injury when he went down, and I mean, it was, you could hear a pin drop in Heinz Field. It was quiet. No one knew what was going on. The whole team was huddled around him. Everyone knows that this season rides on TJ Watt's availability. And if he's out, this team is done. It's just a fact. And then when he got up and he was on his feet, you heard the crowd chanting, TJ, TJ. I thought that was pretty cool from Pittsburgh, and them cheering him on. But when he went in the tit, Cam Hayward went with him, because that's his brother, and they were like looking at everything. Now, TJ Watt was walking around on the sideline. I will remind people, you can walk around with a torn ACL. I'm not saying that's what he has. I'm just saying that you can walk around with it, and it can not show. There can also be things that can lead to say, hey, like, you're really close to messing this up. So there's a lot of things that have to go on. He's getting MRIs on both his hip and his knee. That will determine the future that he has with this season. If you're TJ Watt, there's a lot of scary things here. I think it's going to be safe to say, though, you'll probably want to rest him next week because you don't want to rush him back into a situation where he's going to be putting himself at risk. But of course, what that means, you're probably playing Taco Charlton, and that's not exactly the best look you want to have right now. Alex Highsmith, at times looks very good, at times looks very bad. But again, second-year, third-round draft pick, kind of what you expect from him. But this is why I said that they should try to keep Melvin Ingram. But again, you can't keep a guy who's malcontent with the team. That's not easy to do. And they've been down that road before, and it's not worked out for them. They've been burned by that with James Harrison and LeGarrette Blount. So I understand not wanting to go back down that road. But again, injuries mounting for them. Trey Turner and Kevin Dotson go out. Dotson did not look good. He was on a cart. Was reported an ankle injury. That could be a season type thing. And if it is, man, they're in a lot of trouble because they put J.C. Hassenauer, they played Joe Haig back at guard. Whew, it was a rough look. And Trey Turner being out, really stressed that out. The Steelers guards being out, that could change a lot of things too, because even though they weren't like elite players or anything like that, they were at least, I'd say Trey Turner and Kevin Dotson, more of the more reliable guys you could have on that offensive line right now. It's just, there's just that limited because they got two rookies and then Chukuma Korfu, who I actually think is actually doing a better job than most people give him credit for. But that's a lot of problems there. So injuries are mounting for this team. It's a lot of big questions moving forward. Will they be able to, to get back in action? We will find out. But we can't ignore this defense. The run defense was putrid in this game. They gave up 130 yards to DeAndre Swift, 56 yards on 2 carries to Igwebuike, and then Jefferson also had 41 yards. They had gave up long runs of 42, 28, and 21. That's abhorrent. And now I know people say, "Oh, the run defense has been like this all year," and I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa." There were a couple moments earlier in the season, maybe going into this game, they allowed 2 rushing touchdowns to running backs all season. That's 8 games. 2 rushing touchdowns to running backs through 8 games. That's 1 every 4 games. That ain't bad. This game, bad, because you doubled that in 1 game. If you allow this every game, you're probably gonna lose most games. But I will say this: for all the defensive problems that they have, how many times do you see a game where a team wins the turnover margin by 3 and you don't lose that game? I think the defense actually, once they rebounded, once they figured things out, after that second touchdown that they gave up um, in the third quarter, they shut it down after that. I mean, let's look at. There was just several punts. I think it was 5 punts, 6 punts in a row. And then they missed a field goal in overtime, forced another punt. So 8 punts and a missed field goal after that touchdown. But you look at this and you're saying, man, where were the adjustments early on? Now, part of it, one was the short field. They were put right back out there and they gave up a big run play. But the offense only having to go 39 yards, that'll put you in a tough spot and you give up that touchdown. But the one for me was the 6-play, 85-yard touchdown drive, where they just got gashed to come out the half. And that's happened a couple times now. But this is part of what I've been saying for a while now. Interior defensive line, really shaky. There's times they have really good days, but when you have guys that aren't too dependable, when you don't have guys out there that you drafted to be super starters like Stephon Tuitt, like Tyson Olulu, though they picked him up in free agency, but you get my point. You're going to have plays where you're getting gashed up the middle. I know some people are getting to Devin Bush. I got something for him. Don't worry. But I said this, back in the Seahawks game. You're going to have those days where your defensive line is getting chewed up and your backers are getting hit and blocked at the point of attack. You do not want to have your backers, especially when they're backers like Devin Bush and Joe Schobert. They're not block shed guys. They're faster. Fill in. Keep them free. Fill in and let them make the tackle at the point of attack. So that you got to have that. The Steelers don't have that. They're built to have that. That's why they signed Tyson Olulu. That's why they paid Stephon Tuitt the money he has. That's why they paid Cam Hayward the money that he has. But now with both of those guys gone, and Carlos Davis, you're dealing with guys that you didn't expect that you'd have to deal with, and that's tough. But you got to get over it. As Cam Hayward said, he's like, there's no excuse. He said, at one point in his press conference after the game, Cam Hayward was asked, well, how many players on defense will it take to go out before you guys reach a tipping point? He said all 53. And that's Cam Hayward right there. He's a captain. He's not gonna go for that kind of stuff. But when I look at the defense and I see, this problem here and this problem there, eventually, the reality is you can't. I know next man up is a thing that people say, but eventually you're going to get to the next man up who's just not, that can't do what the guy before him did, which is why he was down on the depth chart. Um, I do think that when I look back at this game and I was seeing, man, missed tackle here, missed tackle there. A lot of it happened because the Lions were getting a charge and being able to push down the field because the Steelers defensive line couldn't hold up. Now, Cam Hayward, he was a wrecking ball. He was out there playing. You got to appreciate what he was able to do in this one. Even though he only had 5 tackles, he had 2 sacks on the day. That was he was really getting after it. There were plays where you just saw him just busting loose and saving the day. Really good stuff from him on that point. But but other than that, I mean, Isaiah Buggs did have some good reps, but for the most part, getting blown off the ball, not what you want to see. Isaiah Loudermilk had a couple plays, but it just wasn't disciplined play up front. And the same thing goes for Alex Highsmith. Even though he had 11 tackles in this game, he wasn't, all the way the thing to blame here. He had 2 tackles for loss. I wouldn't say he was terrible, but there were a couple of big plays that he gave up because he gave up his outside shoulder. He has to be more disciplined in that front. But again, second year, third round player. But we're getting to Devin Bush here. 8 tackles, which on its face looks good. And I liked some of the run fits that he had because when he was able to flow to the run at the line of scrimmage, he made the play. But we're seeing him once again when he's trying to make the tackles way downfield, he's kind of recovering. You're not seeing him finish those plays. You also had the defensive holding call. Now, I will say this. If that's defensive holding, man, Deontay Johnson needs to get a lot more of those because he gets held almost every play like that. I mean, we were talking about that after the Bears game, as much as everyone was saying, oh, the Steelers got away with the taunting call. I was like, man, they were grabbing on Deontay. The Browns did the same thing. It's been something that's just been kind of very occasionally called, and the occasions seem to not favor the Steelers. But again, that was a play where he needed to not make the mistake there because Minkah Fitzpatrick's interception would have flipped the game all the way around. Again, maybe not because still overtime you get the ball to the offense and maybe they don't do something, but still a problem. And he hasn't been an asset this year. But again, as I've said all along, the thing we knew Devin Bush, one, super young. I say to those who, because I had several of y'all tweet at me saying, oh, you always cover up for Devin Bush. And I'm like, listen, buddy, I'm just letting y'all know. Y'all said the same thing to me about Bud Dupree 4 or 5 years ago when he was not doing too great. And then all of a sudden, you're like, oh, we love Bud Dupree. We want him to come back. And I'm just like, yeah, it takes time to let guys develop. They're young. They're still learning the game. He's coming back from a torn ACL. And again, he's not a guy. He's not Ray Lewis. He's not a guy that where he needs to be free. But even Ray Lewis, if you go back to some of those the mid Ravens in the 2000s, after that early 2000s defense dissipated, Ray Lewis said, we need to get guys in front of me that can eat up blockers because people are getting me at the second level, and that's why we can't win games. When they did that again, the Ravens became a great defense again. The same thing goes for Jack Lambert and Jack Ham in the 70s with the Steelers. The Steel Curtain was called the Steel Curtain because that defensive line kept those linebackers clean and they were hitting people. The Steelers defensive line right now isn't doing that. The last 2 years, they were doing that because Cam Hayward, Stephon Tuitt, Tyson Alulu were all healthy. Though with two of those 3 guys down, you're not able to do that as consistently. So that's a problem. But at the same time, you do expect more out of Devin Bush. But again, super young guy. He's 22, 23 years old. He's gonna grow. He's gonna keep going, moving that direction. 8 tackles. I'm not as down on him as some people will be, but does he need to be better? Absolutely. But again, the problem is right now, if you're wanting this team to be elite, they can't be elite right now if all these guys continue to be hurt. I will say this, the secondary, I thought stood up in this game. I'm going to hear it from Tony Serino because he loves him some James Pierre. I thought James Pierre had himself a game, had 5 tackles, 2 tackles on special teams as well. Really looked solid in coverage. They went after him a couple times and it didn't result in anything. I thought Cam Sutton looked good in this game. He was able to make some plays. Joe Hayden being hurt didn't actually end up burning the Steelers the way I thought it would. I thought Terrell Edmonds was phenomenal in this game. I thought he had 5 tackles, a sack, another tackle for loss, a pass breakup. He was the guy that they drafted him to be in the first round in this game. Now, has he been that all season? No, he hasn't. But this was a game where I thought he stepped up and it was kind of a wasted effort to not get the win when he's playing the way he did. I thought Trey Norwood played a heck of a game. He had 2 passes defense and a tackle. I thought he did well. There's remnants of what the Steelers can do here. There's not hopelessness here, but the problem is there's not consistency. There's not a base to say, okay, you're definitely going to be great at these things. And part of that comes with injury, but part of it comes from they need their core to come together. They need to find their strengths. Defensively, they need to be better at stopping the run. They have been this season. We saw with the Browns game. They shut it down. When they focused on that for the entire week, they said Nick Chubb will not beat us. They took that away. In this game, I think that they went through the same situation they did against the Seahawks. They were too worried about saying, "Hey, this is a bad quarterback that we're playing. He's gonna be, he's gonna try and hit, a deep shot or two. We just don't want to, allow him to hit a deep shot, and we want to force them to beat us with the long way." Well, they did that against the Seahawks, almost lost that game. They did that against the Lions, almost lost the game. Virtually, you did with the tie because you blew the opportunity to get to 6-3, which with their tiebreakers would have put them ahead of the Ravens temporarily to be first place in the AFC North. I know that doesn't really mean anything, but still would have been a heck of an opportunity. You would have picked up a whole game on the Browns, half game on the Bengals, whole game on the Ravens. Just a really big missed opportunity against a winless Lions team. Lots of questions moving forward. Can they shape up the tackling? I believe they got the Chargers next week. They've got to do that. The Chargers, they don't look great themselves, but I'll just one final thing here before I go. Joe Schobert said this at the end of the press con or after the game in his press conference, and he talked about maybe guys need to focus a little focus a little bit more during practice or practice a little bit harder. And I saw people say, "Whoa, the Steelers didn't practice hard." And I'm like, I don't think that means what you think it means. When you go back and you look at it, don't forget the Steelers had a very short week on Wednesday, which normally would have been like their serious ramp up day. On Wednesday, they were doing a walkthrough. On Thursday, they were coming off the walkthrough. On Friday, they're going back to walkthroughs because they don't want to they don't want to beat each other up, 2 days before their game. This was a shorter week. They tried to go through some different things, and it didn't work out for them. I think what Schobert's saying is like, hey, this next full week of practice, you got Sunday to Sunday to play. Let's have a full week of practice and let's get after it. I think that's more so what he's saying there. It's not a lack of going hard on the team. It's more so like, hey, this was you needed to come up because again, that Bears game, Cam Hayward was banged up. The team was banged up. There was a lot of questions there. They're banged up after this game too, but they've got to find a way to come together, be more physical, be ready for this next game, because if they aren't, it's going to be some serious problems moving forward for your Pittsburgh Steelers. But got a lot more to talk about, a lot more analysis to do. I'm going to keep hitting the film a little bit, going looking for some more angles here. We'll hopefully have Tony Serino on for a Tony Tuesday tomorrow here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. We thank you for watching this episode. We hope Steelers fans, hey, hang in there. I know it was a tough one, but we will keep you abreast of things. We're going to get you more analysis right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, which you can find on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and of course YouTube. Like this video on YouTube. If you're watching, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Really helps us out. Remember to give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts with a positive comment, and you get a special shout out at the end of the show. We got another shout out to give to Bryce. Bryce gives us a 5-star review saying, "Great show, Chris. Really look forward to some no nonsense quality analysis each week. Great show. Keep it up." Thank you, Bryce. That's the thing. I try to have fun with my guests and everything, but I want to make sure y'all getting straight takes, film analysis, talk, breaking down what I see with the team. I go to practice every day. I see what they're doing. I work on, I ask players questions. I ask coaches questions. I want to get y'all the real insight there. So thank you, Bryce, for noticing that. Thank you all for noticing that, for continuing to watch the show. Be back on tomorrow with more on your Pittsburgh Steelers.